Okay, hello everybody. This is Herbert from DECO BOKO Speaks. Today we have Julie. She is a freelance journalist, and me and Julie have been friends for maybe 5 or 6 years now.
Yeah.
And we've had lots of experience through Japan and Japanese products. So yeah, if you could maybe start from talking a little bit about yourself, that would be great.
Sure. I'm a journalist. I live in Los Angeles, and I cover mostly design and culture topics, art, architecture, and travel. And I also cover a lot of culinary topics, including wine, sake, spirits, and cocktails, and coffee. And so I always say it's kind of all the fun topics.
Mm. Yeah, you cover many different topics. That was my impression, but are journalists mostly like that, or I know some people focuses on very particular topics, but I think out of the um, topics that you've mentioned, I feel like you have lots of experience with Japanese products and companies as well. Actually, me and Julie have met at a Japanese retail store, which I was working at the time, and that's when I knew you like those kinds of products.
Yeah.
But over time, we've been, talking about not even just what we are working on, but in general, we like to talk about Japanese fashion and kitchen related products and art and things like that. So maybe, yeah, could you tell us about how you became involved with Japanese products?
Well, I grew up in the Bay Area, and I remember as a young girl spending time in San Francisco, going to Japanese pop culture stores there and there. Then I moved to LA and discovered how much Japanese culture, art, pop culture, and food are really important in the cultural landscape of Los Angeles.
Right.
By 2008 was my first trip to Japan. I got to visit my cousin in Tokyo, who was living there at the time and was working as a design journalist. So my editors were very interested in stories from Japan and me bringing back whatever I could find that would be interesting to our readers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting to see over time how much Japanese culture and food is so important in Los Angeles culture. So that's
Right.
how I met you, doing an article about you at Tortoise and the coffee department at Tortoise and all the coffee products you were bringing in from Japan. And I feel like there's always something new to learn, whether I'm in Japan or visiting someone who represents Japanese culture here in Los Angeles.
Right. I didn't know you grew up in the Bay Area.
Yeah. In Marin County, but I loved going to San Francisco because I'm definitely a city person. And so anytime my parents would ask me, what do I want to do? I wanted to go into San Francisco and go to shopping or concerts or restaurants or the parks, anything. I just loved the city so much.
I know that San Francisco or Northern California has a big Japanese American community. So were you kind of involved in that when you were growing up, or not really?
Not as much. It was more a visiting of the stores. I was around when Hello Kitty first came to the US, and I was a little girl asking to go to the shops where I knew I could buy those items. And I was very interested in Japanese food, but I didn't really get to experience more people from Japan and Japanese culture until I moved to LA and went to UCLA. And it's such a cosmopolitan city and such a global city. That's when I feel like I was really able to start meeting the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's a coincidence that you have family in Japan.
Yeah.
So yeah, um, I think it's different when you have family in Japan and just the purpose of the trip is to see family or just to kind of, without work, being in Japan is different from just, going on a business trip, I think. So I think your experience, your first experience in Japan was pretty unique for someone coming from the US.
My cousin had been living there for quite a long time when I visited him and had a Japanese almost fiance at the time. And so we were already visiting with her family and eating lunch at their house and going out to karaoke together. And my cousin's friends were a combination of local Japanese colleagues and expats. So I really did get to see Tokyo from that kind of inside how people live there, which was really, really fun. And we even went to Tokyo Stadium and went to a baseball game. I mean, I got to do so many things because he was showing me around.
So your family is based in Tokyo, right?
So my cousin's family, they live in, his mother and father-in-law live in Meguro. And we are very close with them, even though it's my cousin's mother and father-in-law. We've just become very close and keep in contact with them and visit them when we're in Japan, even when their daughter's not in Japan, because she and her husband have now moved to Orange County.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
Right. So I think I really enjoy visiting Tokyo. I'm from a city called Nagoya, which is about an hour and 40 minutes bullet train ride from Nagoya Station. But do you have any, maybe like the top 3 favorite places to visit Japan?
Well, I love Tokyo. I mean, I've gone to Tokyo all the trips that I've been to Japan. But my last trip, I got to visit Tohoku. And it was interesting because while I was researching where I would want to go in the area, I discovered that Towada City is very focused on celebrating contemporary Japanese art and architecture. And it was the most wonderful day getting to see a library designed by Tadao Ando and a community center designed by Kengo Kuma. And that the Towada Art Center is like a world-class museum with an outdoor sculpture garden with Yoshimoto Nara and Yayoi Kusama, and the collection inside, Japanese artists and international artists in the most contemporary architectural space. It was spectacular, and kind of a small city to have embarked on being this focused on celebrating art and architecture. And I also got to go to Sendai to the Nika Miyagikyo distillery, and I'm very interested in whiskey and have just been to whiskey distilleries around the world. So that was a spectacular day, and I loved Sendai. And I went to Fukuoka, which I loved, and I really want to go back there because I know there's so much more to explore. So for me, each place in Japan has something new to explore and something surprising, even though you get kind of focused on Tokyo and the excitement of the urban landscape.
I think Japan is a really interesting country when you look at how small it is, but again, how culturally diverse it is within the Japanese people. Like, there's so many like different dialects between the short distances, and there's so many different types of food depending on the area.
Yeah.
And it's a small country, but it expands really long from north to south. So the climate is also really unique to the area. So I think that's maybe one of the reasons there's so many different types of food. And I think for people who are watching this and maybe logging on to the DECO BOKO website or the trade show, can see so many different products and materials that Japan has to offer. So yeah, maybe I kind of want to ask your opinion on how the Japanese products, especially some of the higher end products that are mostly processed or done by hand, and has kind of a unique characteristic to it. What do you think those types of products, how do you think they're positioned in the current US market?
It's really interesting because when I was there last time, I visited so many exhibits, I went to so many places, and I feel like even Japanese culture right now is celebrating traditional techniques.
Yes.
But while they celebrate traditional techniques, if it's a giant tapestry or the most elaborate kimono, that's just to look at. We're not going to have that in our regular lives. But
Right.
if it's celebrating traditional technique and it's beautiful traditional cups, but they really make sense in a modern household, and they're beautiful traditional incense holders, teapots, you name it. There's a lot of things that are based in something traditional but really make sense in our modern households. I mean, in the US, people love mid-century design, we love Danish design, we love Japanese design. So all these things that are very sleek, handmade and beautiful, but are accessible for us to add to our collections. And you might put a Danish cup next to a Japanese cup next to something from Heath Ceramics here in California. And it's really been fun to see all of those traditional crafts get celebrated, and then for us to pick the most useful ones to bring into our lives.
Right. Do you think American people are, comparing to maybe 10, 15 years ago, do you think American people are more open to Japanese products than before?
100%. I think people are very interested in the country and travel, very interested in it from anything from the art and architecture side or skiing there or doing something in nature to anime and pop culture and video game culture. All these things really pull people towards Japan, and we want to bring something home. And then you start to realize they're not just the objects that you bought as a tourist, but that you're starting to appreciate Japanese design, craftsmanship. And then you might just say, well, I need a new set of cups. I like the things that I saw in Japan. I'm going to look for that here too.
Right.
And I think that that's starting to become pretty common with people who are interested in design and people who are interested in aesthetics. And again, someone might have a mid-century house or an old Spanish Mediterranean house like mine, but I love bringing in all of these things. They all seem to fit together in some amazing way. And I mean, just adding an origami dripper that you carry, these porcelain gorgeous drippers. I'm a coffee geek. I was thrilled to put that with my other coffee items from Japan because it's so beautiful and useful. And it doesn't look like I was in some tourism shop in Japan. It just looks like a beautiful piece of design that has Japanese heritage.
Right. So as a curator of the DECO BOKO trade show, we try to fill in the gaps between the American buyers and the Japanese manufacturers. And we are trying to create a platform where everything could be done in one transaction, kind of. How do you feel about the DECO BOKO trade show? I mean, obviously it just started, and we're gonna have more brands coming in the next couple of months, and it's gonna look more interesting with you on the show and everything. But what do you think? What are your thoughts on the DECO BOKO trade show?
It seems like perfect timing. I've done so many things virtually online during the year 2020 that I never would have thought of before. I was an in-person, go see it in person, go experience it in person. And now I just did a whiskey tasting with people all over the world, virtually on Zoom.
Oh,
I
really?
attended a book talk in Portland, and I feel as if I had a store that I needed to fill the shelves with the most beautiful things. And I personally, if I had a store, would be buying things from Japan because that's one of my favorite countries and places to find makers. I feel like it's a great resource for stores to have access to some of the things that they would want. And again, these things that are more universal and useful than they are to show that you bought something really traditional as a tourist in Japan. These are the useful designs that we look to Japanese craftsmen to bring into our lives. So I think it's great.
Right. Yeah, I'm really glad to ask your opinion on this, and I've been really I've been talking to a lot of different people about how retail has been shifting and everything's going online and things like that. But we also want to keep the experience of actually feeling and touching
I know.
and things like that in person. So, like as you can see behind me, I have a physical showroom in Los Angeles, and we have another one in New York. So people who who wants to actually look at the products has access to it still. And I think because we are focused only on Japanese products, it would be easier for the buyers also if they are looking for something specifically from Japan. Um, so I think that's going to be a really good combination, and yeah, I hope many buyers would participate in this trade show. So yeah, I'm glad you had positive feedback on us.
I think as long as from the visuals and any information that you have about the products that because I can't touch the bags on the top row, if you can tell me what's the material, what's the texture, maybe there's a video about it, all these things will help me feel less sad about not being in the showroom and more confident about that is the right thing. That is what I would add to, the inventory in my gallery or store or online shop.
Yeah,
And I think that right now we all have to start, getting pretty virtual about a lot of things. And we will be able to shop virtually and feel confident about the things that we're buying if we trust the people.
right.
And if I'm able to read about the company and I hear that they're in Hokkaido and they've been making ceramics for 200 years, and this is, here's our description of the quality, I'd probably order it and see,
Mhm.
and it sounds great. I want to try it. And then you get your hands on it and you can see that, you made a good choice.
Yeah, I think details are the keys for successful wholesale business, especially. And then obviously after that, you need to sell them retail so that it kind of all connects. But you know, I've been I have experience in the retail business as a buyer, right? And back then it was, I don't want to say it was less challenging, but it was less process between the manufacturer and the consumers because I was the one in between and I could kind of directly educate my staff and explain it to the customers at the shop. But
Yeah.
now I need to do that to the buyers. So that's also a challenge for me. But at the same time, I'm really happy that the American buyers are responding positively to Japanese products, and everybody's always interested in finding out about new brands and things that they've never seen before. Um,
Yeah.
that's really, I think, good for the Japanese market because this is one. I don't want to say it's a sad thing, but in Japan, it's kind of like popularity is the key to being successful.
Hmm.
And if something sells in the U.S., then that would be a really good way to market that product in Japan. But in the US, I think it's more about how unique the products are and how you can maybe share that to your clients or customers as opposed to like how big it's going to be like in magazines or like a celebrity using it and sharing that photo. So I think I'm in a really a unique position that I can kind of see both sides, and I'm really happy to be working with people like you and the people I'm working with as far as wholesale buyers. So yeah, I'm really glad to share this experience with you and to everybody else who's watching.
I've gotten to learn so much from you, Herbert, just over the years of the people you've introduced me to and the products you've shown me and what I've learned about Japanese tradition, craftsmanship, and what's contemporary, what's new and kind of happening there. I think a lot of what Deco Boko has going for it is the curation. We're not mixing in Hello Kitty and Sanrio. That's a different part of retail. And we're not mixing in the oldest looking traditional detailed things that are artifacts. These are the items that look contemporary but maybe have traditional techniques, and they're all it's so interesting to see them all together because I can see 10 or 12 or 20 or 100 different stores and what their inventory could be that are some of the things from Deco Boko, because I'm looking behind you and there's the bags and there's a handmade coffee grinder and there's ceramics and there's brass. I just have books, and I just feel like people can have some confidence that you've already curated it down to some of the most beautiful things, but that make sense in our contemporary lives and in the things that we use now, and not just things to stick on a shelf for art, which is nice. I love art. But these are the in general, your inventory is the useful things that we can, add to our lives, replace something that isn't as high a quality. And then also for the people who are offering it to their customers, you've already curated it down to the inventory of some of my favorite stops in Japan and around this country, and sort of the style and aesthetic of how they show off Japanese culture and design.
Right. Yeah, I know you've been, you have a lot of experience in many types of Japanese products and art and food. Is there anything that you are looking forward to experiencing for the first time, or something that that exists but haven't able to touch or feel before? Is there something you're looking for?
Yeah, I have a friend who's a farmer here in California named Shu Takikawa, and he was born and raised in Hokkaido. And I have never been to Hokkaido, and it is my dream to see where Shu grew up, ideally maybe when he's there visiting family and get to really see where he's from. But just the idea of getting to go to Hokkaido, to taste the foods there, to see some of the manufacturing that's there, to go to the other Nika distillery that is in Hokkaido. That is a part of Japan that I really wanted to go. And I have another friend here in LA who's a well-known food writer, and she was born in Okinawa. And I have seen really adorable photos of her as a tiny girl in Okinawa, and learning about some of the culture and how the food is so different there. I'm very curious. So that's end to end in Japan. I would love to do that. It doesn't have to be the same trip, but that would be kind of fascinating to go to Hokkaido and Okinawa in the same trip.
Yeah, hopefully by next year, we'll be able to travel to Japan again.
Yes, I can't wait.
For today.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Julie, again for.
Thank you.
So yeah, that's all for today. If for the viewers, if you are a wholesale buyer, you can check out more at deco-boko.com. And if you haven't registered yet, you can check out the website and register through there. So hope to see you guys online, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.